5-year-old girl left at bus stop. Every dawn millionaire collapses when he learns the truth. Dawn breaks over Madison Avenue, painting the sky in hues of amber and rose. William Anderson's Mercedes glides to a halt at the traffic light near bus stop 23. Through the tinted windows, his eyes catch an unusual sight: a small figure perched on the bench, feet dangling above the ground. A little girl, no more than 5, clutches a worn backpack adorned with faded butterflies. Her navy uniform is clean but threadbare, her golden hair neatly braided despite the early hour. She sits with perfect posture, eyes fixed on the horizon, radiating a mix of hope and determination that seems far too mature for her age. Most mornings, William barely notices the world outside his luxury sedan. But today, something about this child's solitary vigil pierces through his carefully constructed wall of indifference. As the light turns green, he finds himself wondering what kind of story lies behind those expectant eyes. Who is this little girl waiting for at dawn, when most children are still lost in dreams? Little does he know, this chance encounter at bus stop 23 is about to unravel a web of secrets that will shake the very foundation of his empire and change more lives than he could imagine. At 42, William Anderson embodied the quintessential American success story, at least on paper. As CEO of Anderson Real Estate Development, he commanded a corporate empire spanning 20 states, with assets exceeding $2 billion. His office occupied the top floor of a gleaming skyscraper he'd built himself, its floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of Manhattan that most could only dream of. Yet behind the polished mahogany desk and designer suits lurked a profound emptiness. William's days followed an unchanging routine: wake at 4 a.m., work out in his private gym, arrive at the office by 6 a.m., and work until the city lights flickered on. His marriage had dissolved 5 years ago, leaving behind a penthouse too large for one person and a collection of awards that gathered dust on spotless shelves. Born into modest means in suburban Boston, William had clawed his way to the top through relentless determination and raw intelligence. His father, a construction worker, died in a site accident when William was 12, leaving his mother to raise him and his younger brother James on a waitress's salary. The tragedy ignited something in William, a burning drive to build something unshakable, to rise above the precariousness of working-class life. He graduated valedictorian, earned a full scholarship to Harvard, and began his ascent through the real estate world with single-minded focus. By 30, he had founded his own company. By 35, he had transformed it into one of the largest development firms on the East Coast. Success followed success, each achievement adding another brick to the wall he built around his heart. The board members praised his strategic brilliance, the business press lauded his Midas touch, but few knew the price of his rise. His ex-wife Claire had finally left after years of trying to reach the man buried beneath spreadsheets and shareholder reports. "You've built an empire," she'd said on her way out, "but you've forgotten how to build a home." His brother James, once his closest confidant, had grown distant, though he remained the company's chief financial officer. Most mornings, William took the long route to work, his chauffeur navigating pre-dawn streets while he reviewed reports on his tablet. He told himself it was to avoid traffic, but deep down, he knew he was avoiding the emptiness of his penthouse. The route took him past bus stop 23, a seemingly insignificant corner of his vast urban domain. He rarely noticed the parade of early morning workers waiting there until the day he saw the little girl. Something about her solitary figure tugged at memories he'd long suppressed of standing at a different bus stop with James, waiting for their mother to return from her night shift, of the vulnerability and hope of childhood. But William Anderson hadn't built his empire by dwelling on the past or letting emotion cloud his judgment. Or so he thought, until that spring morning when everything he'd built began to unravel, starting with a simple question: why was a 5-year-old girl sitting alone at his bus stop every dawn? At 5 years old, Sophie Parker had already developed the kind of resilience that would break most adults' hearts. Every morning, rain or shine, she woke at 4:30 a.m. in the women's shelter on East 42nd Street, carefully putting on her second-hand private school uniform, a scholarship gift from an anonymous donor. Her small fingers had mastered the art of braiding her own hair, a skill learned out of necessity rather than choice. The navy blazer and pleated skirt, though slightly too large, were kept immaculately clean. Each evening Sophie would hand-wash any spots, hanging them to dry on a makeshift clothesline strung between shelter beds. Her prized possession was a purple backpack, its faded butterflies barely visible but cherished all the same. Inside, she kept her mother's last letter, protected in a plastic sandwich bag, along with her school supplies and a small photo of a smiling woman with eyes identical to her own. Despite living in a shelter, Sophie maintained perfect attendance at Greenwich Preparatory Academy. Her teachers marveled at her exceptional performance in mathematics and her unfailing politeness. What they didn't know was that behind her quiet demeanor lay an unshakable determination. She believed, with the pure conviction of childhood, that excellence in school would somehow help her mother return faster. The other shelter residents had grown protective of the little girl who never complained. M.S. Thompson, an elderly woman who occupied the bed next to Sophie's, would watch in silence as the child performed her morning ritual. A social worker named Linda Reynolds had been assigned to Sophie's case, but even she couldn't persuade the girl to wait for the school bus at a more reasonable hour. "My mummy knows to find me at bus stop 23, Sophie would say with unwavering certainty. She promised she'd come back when things got better. The truth about Sophie's situation was carefully guarded by the shelter staff. They knew only that Sarah Parker, her mother, had been a hotel employee until 5 months ago. One morning, Sophie had been found at the bus stop with a letter and detailed instructions for her care. The police investigation had gone cold, and Sophie had been placed in the shelter's temporary custody while the system processed her case. What set Sophie apart wasn't just her circumstances, but her response to them. While other children her age threw tantrums or withdrew into themselves, Sophie maintained an almost otherworldly sense of purpose. She attended every class, completed every assignment, and spent her free time drawing pictures of her mother, always smiling, always wearing the blue uniform of the Grand Plaza Hotel where she had worked. Each morning at bus stop 23, Sophie would arrange her belongings with careful precision, backpack at her feet, hands folded in her lap, eyes fixed on the corner where her mother had last waved goodbye. She politely declined offers of help from concerned passers-by, responding with a practiced phrase, "Thank you, but I'm waiting for my mummy. She knows where to find me." The mixture of dignity and innocence in her voice often left adults fighting back tears as they hurried past, their own problems suddenly seeming insignificant in comparison to this solitary child's quiet vigil. Sarah Parker's story was one of sacrifice wrapped in silence. At 32, she had been a senior housekeeper at the Grand Plaza Hotel, one of William Anderson's most prestigious properties. Her colleagues remembered her as the woman who sang softly while working, who always carried band-aids for their blisters, and who managed to attend every one of Sophie's school events, despite working double shifts. What they didn't know was that Sarah had uncovered disturbing irregularities in the hotel's operations. Working late one night, she had witnessed a heated argument between James Anderson and unknown men in suits, followed by the exchange of unmarked envelopes. The hotel's accounting logs, which she had access to while cleaning the management offices, showed discrepancies that pointed to something far more sinister than simple mismanagement. Sarah's integrity had been both her strength and her downfall. Rather than looking the other way, she had meticulously documented everything, storing evidence in a safety deposit box. She had planned to report her findings through proper channels, believing in the system's fairness. But before she could act, anonymous threats began appearing, first in her locker, then under her apartment door. The messages made it clear her silence was expected, or Sophie would pay the price. The breaking point came on a rainy Tuesday evening. Sarah had stayed late to cover a co-worker's shift, leaving Sophie with their elderly neighbor. Walking through the hotel's underground parking garage, she heard screams echoing off the concrete walls. Without hesitation, she had run toward the sound, finding William Anderson collapsed beside his car, clutching his chest. Her quick action and basic CPR knowledge had kept him alive until paramedics arrived, though in the chaos, he never saw her face clearly. That same night, Sarah received the most chilling threat yet. A photograph of Sophie sleeping in her bed, accompanied by a simple message, "Choose wisely." Within hours, Sarah had executed her desperate plan. She withdrew Sophie from school, packed essential documents, and wrote the hardest letter of her life. Before dawn, she left her daughter at bus stop 23, the place where they had shared countless morning hugs before school with detailed instructions and her last savings. The investigating officers had labeled it abandonment, but they never found the evidence Sarah had gathered, nor understood the impossible choice she had faced. She had disappeared into the vast network of women's shelters across the country, taking waitressing jobs under assumed names, moving whenever she felt she might be recognized. Each penny earned was split between survival and a growing fund for Sophie's future. Sarah's only contact with her old life was through Linda Reynolds, the social worker she had chosen carefully. Monthly letters arrived from different cities, each containing money orders for Sophie's care and the same promise: "When it's safe, when I have enough proof, I'll come back for you." Linda kept these letters sealed in her office, sharing only the essential messages with Sophie, protecting the child from the weight of her mother's burden. What Sarah couldn't have known was that her act of saving William Anderson's life had set in motion a chain of events that would eventually bring everything to light. The truth she had discovered, the sacrifice she had made, and the wisdom of her choice in leaving Sophie at bus stop 23 all would converge in ways she could never have imagined, leading either to justice or to tragedy, depending on the choices of those involved in the unfolding drama. William's routine shattered the morning he finally stopped his car at bus stop 23. Something about Sophie's solitude that day, perhaps the way she shivered slightly in the early spring chill, broke through his carefully constructed indifference. He instructed his driver to pull over, a decision that would alter countless lives. "Good morning," he said, approaching with measured steps. Sophie looked up, her posture straightening even further. "Are you waiting for someone?" The question seemed inadequate the moment it left his lips. "Yes, sir," she replied with startling clarity. "I'm waiting for my mummy. She works at your hotel." The mention of his hotel caught William off guard. Sophie continued, her voice carrying the rehearsed quality of a message repeated countless times. She said, "This is where we'll meet when things get better." That evening, instead of his usual market reports, William found himself reviewing security footage from bus stop 23. The recordings showed the same pattern: Sophie arriving precisely at 5 a.m., sitting perfectly still until 7:30 a.m. when a shelter volunteer would escort her to school. His security team's preliminary report landed on his desk by midnight. Sophie Parker, age 5, resident of Eastside Women's Shelter, former student at Greenwich Preparatory Academy under a mysterious scholarship. The following days saw William deploying resources with the same intensity he usually reserved for multi-million-dollar acquisitions. His private investigators tracked down Sophie's school records, revealing stellar performance despite her circumstances. Teachers' reports painted a picture of remarkable resilience. "Sophie completes every assignment with exceptional care," wrote her mathematics teacher. "She approaches each task as if her future depends on it." The shelter proved more challenging to investigate. Linda Reynolds, Sophie's social worker, refused to disclose details even when faced with William's considerable influence. "Mr. Anderson," she had said firmly during their meeting, "your interest in Sophie's case is noted, but I'm bound by confidentiality. These children need protection more than they need charity." It was during his third morning observing Sophie that William noticed something odd. As she arranged her backpack, a paper fluttered to the ground, a hotel receipt with handwritten notes on the back. The date caught his eye: December 15th, the night he had his heart attack in the parking garage. The coincidence nagged at him, leading him to dig deeper into the hotel's personnel records from that period. What he found disturbed him: dozens of employee resignations around that time, unusual financial transactions, and a pattern of internal complaints that had mysteriously disappeared. At the center of it all was a gapper missing employee file for a senior housekeeper named Sarah Parker. William's investigation took an unexpected turn when he received an anonymous email containing security footage from the night of his heart attack. The grainy video showed a woman in a hotel uniform performing CPR, her face partially obscured but her movements decisive. In the background, barely visible, stood his brother James, watching the scene unfold with an expression William had never seen before. That discovery led him to his brother's office early one morning, but instead of answers, he found James frantically shredding documents. Their eyes met across the desk, decades of trust crumbling in seconds. "Will," James said, his voice strained, "some things are better left alone. For everyone's sake." But William couldn't let it go. Sophie's daily vigil had awakened something in him, a recognition of the same determination he'd once had, waiting for his own mother at a different bus stop. He began connecting the dots, the missing employee files, the financial irregularities, the timing of Sarah Parker's disappearance, and his brother's increasingly erratic behavior. The investigation had started as simple curiosity about a lonely child. It was evolving into something far more complex, a web of corporate corruption, personal betrayal, and a mother's desperate choice. For the first time in years, William felt truly alive, driven by something more meaningful than profit margins. But he had no way of knowing that his pursuit of the truth would soon force him to choose between his empire and his conscience, between family loyalty and justice for a little girl who refused to give up hope. The East Side Women's Shelter stood in stark contrast to the luxury hotels in William's portfolio. The building's faded brick exterior and narrow windows spoke of decades of underfunding, yet the inside revealed a different story. Clean floors, organized spaces, and walls covered with children's artwork suggested dignity preserved against all odds. William's first official visit came through proper channels, a potential donor's inspection. M.S. Thompson, the elderly resident who had taken Sophie under her wing, watched him with knowing eyes as he toured the facility. "That child," she said when they crossed paths in the common area, "she's got the same look you do, like she's carrying the weight of promises on her shoulders." Life in the shelter followed strict routines. Sophie shared a room with 3 other children and their mothers, though her bed stood noticeably alone. Her small space was immaculate, uniform hanging pressed, shoes aligned perfectly, homework always completed on the wobbly desk she shared with others. The shelter staff spoke of her in hushed, concerned tones, her adamant refusal to join the other children in play, her silent dedication to schoolwork, her unwavering belief that her mother would return. Through careful observation and quiet conversations, William pieced together Sophie's daily life. She woke before anyone else, washing her face in cold water to avoid using the limited hot water supply. Breakfast was always the same, a peanut butter sandwich saved from the previous night's dinner ration, eaten methodically while reviewing her school notes. The other children had nicknamed her the Little Professor for her serious demeanor and perfect grades. Linda Reynolds finally relented somewhat in her protective stance, sharing carefully selected details. "Sophie hasn't cried once," she revealed during one of their meetings. Not when she arrived, not during thunderstorms, not even when she scraped her knee badly last week. She just looks at that bus stop like it's her lighthouse in a storm. The shelter's logbooks revealed more disturbing patterns. Sophie had been brought in by police at 5:30 a.m. on December 16th, the morning after William's heart attack. The intake notes described her as unusually calm, carrying a detailed letter of instruction and emergency contacts. She had memorized her mother's message, "Wait at bus stop 23. Study hard. I'll come back when it's safe." William's presence at the shelter began to attract attention. James called repeatedly, his voice strained with barely concealed anxiety. Board members questioned the time he spent on charitable matters. But William couldn't shake the growing certainty that Sophie's story somehow intertwined with his own. The breakthrough came during an art therapy session he observed. Sophie's drawings always featured the same elements: her mother in a blue hotel uniform, bus stop 23, and curiously a parking garage with a red cross drawn above it. When asked about the cross, Sophie replied matter-of-factly, "Mummy says that's where she helped save an angel." The shelter's night supervisor, Ellen Martinez, provided the final piece of the puzzle, the night before Sarah disappeared. She confided she called to reserve a bed for Sophie. Her voice was steady, but I could hear fear underneath. She said something about choosing between silence and safety. I didn't understand then. Maybe you will. As William drove home that evening, the city's glossy surface seemed to peel away, revealing the desperate choices made in its shadows. His hotels rose like gleaming monuments to success, while places like the East Side shelter quietly caught those who fell through society's cracks. Somewhere in between lay the truth about Sarah Parker's disappearance and his brother's involvement, a truth that Sophie's unwavering vigil at bus stop 23 had begun to unravel. The first signs of corruption emerged through mundane details. A junior accountant in William's financial team flagged unusual patterns in the Grand Plaza Hotel's books: inflated maintenance costs, ghost employees on payroll, and service contracts with shell companies. All transactions had been approved by James Anderson's office. William's initial review revealed a sophisticated money laundering operation running through several of his hotels. The scheme used housekeeping departments as cover, creating fake positions and diverting funds through a complex network of subcontractors. The timing of Sarah Parker's disappearance coincided perfectly with a series of particularly large transactions. The evidence trail led to a secure server in James's private office. Late one night, William used his master key to access the files. What he found made his blood run cold: photographs of employees who had resigned. After discovering irregularities, surveillance reports on their families, and detailed dossiers on potential whistleblowers, Sarah Parker's file was the thickest. A hidden camera caught an explosive confrontation between Sarah and James in the hotel's back office. "I won't be part of this," her voice rang clear through the grainy footage. "People trust this company. What you're doing isn't just illegal, it's wrong." James's response was chillingly calm. "Consider carefully what matters most to you, Ms. Parker." The operation's scope was staggering. Over 5 years, nearly $300 million had been funneled through the hotel chain. The money originated from various criminal enterprises, cleaned through legitimate-looking hotel operations. James had orchestrated everything while maintaining his image as the quiet, efficient CFO. Hotel staff began coming forward with stories. A bellhop recalled late-night meetings with suspicious characters. A maintenance worker mentioned threats when he questioned certain invoices. The head of housekeeping remembered Sarah's growing unease in the weeks before her disappearance. The most damning evidence came from Sarah's own records. She had documented everything meticulously: dates, amounts, names. Her notes revealed a pattern of intimidation against employees who asked too many questions. Several had families, like Sarah, making them particularly vulnerable to threats. An encrypted email account contained Sarah's final message to the FBI, sent hours before she disappeared. "I have proof of everything. But they know about Sophie. I have to protect her first. When she's safe, I'll come forward." The email was never delivered. James's team had intercepted it. William discovered that his own heart attack had interrupted a crucial meeting between James and his criminal associates. Sarah, working late that night, had not only saved William's life but had overheard plans for expanding the operation. Her choice to perform CPR had inadvertently exposed her to information that made her too dangerous to ignore. The corruption had spread beyond the hotels. Building permits were expedited through bribes, safety inspections overlooked for payments, and zoning laws circumvented with carefully placed donations. The Anderson real estate empire, William realized with growing horror, had become a vast criminal enterprise under his brother's guidance. Each revelation forced William to confront his own complicity. His obsession with expansion had created blind spots that James exploited. His trust in his brother had left vulnerable employees like Sarah Parker with nowhere to turn. The image of Sophie at bus stop 23, faithfully waiting for justice she couldn't name, became a daily reminder of his failure. The evidence was overwhelming, but acting on it would mean destroying his family's legacy. James wasn't just his brother, he was the last connection to their hard-scrabble childhood, to the dreams they'd built together. Yet Sophie's daily vigil demanded action. In her patient waiting, William recognized a courage that shamed his own hesitation. The time had come to choose between preserving his empire and restoring the justice that Sarah Parker had sacrificed everything to pursue. If this story moved you and you'd like to support our mission of sharing inspiring real-life stories, please take a moment to like this video. Your engagement helps us reach more hearts. The connection crystallized in William's mind during a sleepless night reviewing security footage. He watched himself collapse in the parking garage, saw Sarah Parker emerge from the shadows, her quick hands performing CPR with practiced efficiency. The timestamp matched perfectly December 15th, 11:47 p.m. Less than 6 hours later, she had left Sophie at bus stop 23. William recalled fragments from that night, a woman's voice staying calm, hands pressing steadily against his chest, someone whispering, "Stay with us until paramedics arrived." He remembered trying to thank his savior, but the pain had overwhelmed him. By the time he regained consciousness in the hospital, she had vanished. Sarah's personnel file painted a remarkable picture. Perfect attendance for 5 years, multiple commendations for guest service, 3 promotions in rapid succession. Her supervisor's notes praised her attention to detail and integrity. But beneath the exemplary record lay a pattern. Sarah had worked primarily in the executive floors, where James conducted his late-night meetings. The revelation hit William with stunning force during a board meeting. As James presented the quarterly financials, William noticed his brother absently rubbing his left shoulder, the same nervous tic he'd had as a child when lying to their mother. The pieces suddenly aligned: Sarah's documentation of the money laundering, her presence in the garage that night, the threats that followed, and her desperate choice to protect Sophie. William excused himself and drove to the shelter, finding Sophie in her usual spot at the study table. "Your mother," he said gently. "She worked at the Grand Plaza Hotel." Sophie nodded without looking up from her homework. "She saved someone there," she replied matter-of-factly. "An angel in a dark place. That's why she had to go away, to protect the truth." Linda Reynolds confirmed the timeline. Sarah had called her at midnight, voice shaking but determined. "I've witnessed something," she had said. "If anything happens, there's evidence in a safety deposit box. But Sophie comes first, she always comes first." The social worker had prepared the shelter placement immediately, recognizing the fear behind Sarah's careful words. William's investigation took on new urgency. He hired private investigators to trace Sarah's movements after leaving Sophie. They found a trail of brief shelter stays across state lines, temporary jobs in diners and motels, careful steps to stay ahead of James's network. Each move was calculated to protect both Sophie and the evidence she had gathered. The safety deposit box proved elusive. Sarah had rented it under an alias, using documents William recognized as coming from his own hotel's Lost and Found. Inside, investigators found meticulous records, photographed documents, recorded conversations, dates and times of suspicious meetings. Most crucially, they discovered a letter addressed to William himself. "Mr. Anderson. It began, if you're reading this, then saving your life that night has led you to the truth. Your brother's operations extend beyond money laundering. He's compromised the entire corporate structure. I couldn't stay silent. But Sophie's safety had to come first. She waits at bus stop 23 because I promised to return there. Now you know why I couldn't keep that promise immediately. The evidence is yours to use. Please remember I did everything for my daughter." The letter ended with a series of coded numbers, GPS coordinates, dates and account numbers that would prove instrumental in unraveling James's network. But it was the final line that haunted William. Sometimes the hardest choice is the only right one. You understand that now, don't you? The evidence of corporate malfeasance emerged like a metastasizing cancer. Financial records revealed systematic corruption that had infected every level of the Anderson empire. Through Sarah Parker's carefully preserved documents, William uncovered wire transfers to offshore accounts, falsified environmental impact studies, and bribes paid to city officials. The Grand Plaza Hotel served as the operation's epicenter. Housekeeping payrolls concealed payments to criminal organizations. Renovation contracts masked money laundering operations. Even the hotel's charitable foundation, William discovered with growing disgust, had been used to funnel dirty money through fake community programs. Security footage from the executive floors told a damning story. James held late-night meetings with known criminal figures, their conversations hidden behind closed doors, but their intentions clear from the documentation Sarah had gathered. She had used her position as senior housekeeper to access rooms after these meetings, photographing discarded documents and recording conversations through the ventilation system. The most shocking discovery came from the hotel's internal communication system. Emails between James and the head of security detailed surveillance operations on problematic employees. Sarah's name appeared repeatedly in these exchanges, her movements tracked, her phone tapped. The final email, dated the night of William's heart attack, contained a simple directive: handle the Parker situation permanently. William found proof of similar intimidation tactics used against other employees. A maintenance worker who questioned suspicious deliveries had his children followed to school. A front desk manager who noticed irregular guest records received photos of his wife's daily routine. Each threat was meticulously documented in James's private files, catalogued like trophies. The scale of corruption extended beyond simple financial crimes. Building inspections had been falsified, leading to dangerous structural compromises in several Anderson properties. Environmental regulations were bypassed through elaborate schemes involving shell companies and falsified test results. Lives had been put at risk for the sake of profit. Sarah's evidence pointed to a broader conspiracy. Other hotel chains were implicated, suggesting an industry-wide network of corruption. Senior political figures appeared in transaction records, their influence bought through complex financial arrangements. The entire system operated with clockwork precision, its gears greased with threats and bribes. The facade began cracking when William quietly contacted trusted board members. Initial skepticism turned to horror as he presented Sarah's evidence. The board's attorney, reviewing the documents, grew pale. "This isn't just criminal," she warned. "It's a RICO case. The entire company could be forfeit." James's personal files revealed an obsession with maintaining control. Psychological profiles of key employees, surveillance reports, contingency plans for various scenarios, all meticulously organized. Sarah's file stood out, marked priority target after she saved William's life. Her actions that night had unwittingly placed her at the center of James's paranoid attention. The final piece fell into place when William accessed the hotel's backup servers. Hidden behind layers of encryption, he found videos of James coordinating with criminal organizations. The timestamps aligned perfectly with Sarah's notes. She had discovered not just evidence of crimes, but proof of her employer's direct involvement in orchestrating them. William realized that the corruption hadn't just threatened his company, it had created a moral cancer eating away at everything he'd built. Each revelation forced him to confront his own role in enabling this system, his willful blindness to his brother's activities. The evidence Sarah had risked everything to gather now demanded action, but the consequences would reshape not just his business empire, but the entire industry. The truth about James Anderson emerged through a series of damning revelations. William's investigation uncovered his brother's transformation from trusted CFO to criminal mastermind, a journey that began shortly after their mother's death 5 years ago. The timing aligned perfectly with Sarah Parker's hiring at the Grand Plaza Hotel. James had identified Sarah early as a potential threat. Her attention to detail and unwavering integrity made her dangerous. Security footage showed him watching her from his office window, studying her interactions with staff, noting her close relationship with Sophie. His surveillance logs documented every aspect of their lives: Sophie's school schedule, their apartment layout, even Sarah's daily coffee order. The night of William's heart attack had forced James's hand. Sarah's presence in the parking garage wasn't coincidental. She had been working late, documenting a meeting between James and known criminals. Her decision to save William had exposed her to conversations she was never meant to hear. James's phone records showed frantic calls immediately afterward, culminating in the threats that drove Sarah into hiding. Bank records revealed James's personal stake in the corruption. Offshore accounts held millions in laundered money. Property deeds showed holdings under various aliases. A network of shell companies linked back to childhood friends from their old neighborhood, trusted lieutenants in his criminal enterprise. William discovered his brother's true nature during a late-night confrontation in their mother's old house. "You were always the golden boy," James spat, mask finally dropping. "Building your empire while I did the dirty work. Someone had to make the hard choices." His confession poured out resentment over William's success, anger at living in his shadow, the intoxicating power of controlling others through fear. The evidence implicated James in darker crimes. Encrypted emails detailed plans to permanently silence whistleblowers. Sarah wasn't the first employee forced to flee; others had disappeared completely. Each incident was documented in James's private files with clinical precision, including contingency plans for various scenarios. The depth of betrayal struck hardest when William found their mother's medical records in James's safe. Her death, supposedly from natural causes, coincided with insurance policy changes and suspicious bank transfers. James had used their shared grief as cover to begin his criminal operation, knowing William's emotional withdrawal would blind him to the truth. Sophie's presence at bus stop 23 had unknowingly threatened James's entire operation. Her daily vigil attracted attention, risked exposing Sarah's connection to the company. Surveillance photos showed James watching her from his car, weighing options, ultimately held back only by the potential scrutiny her disappearance would bring. The final piece fell into place through Sarah's hidden recordings. James's voice, cold and calculated, laying out ultimatums, her silence in exchange for Sophie's safety. The recordings captured his evolution from corporate executive to criminal kingpin, revealing a man consumed by power and ego. William sat alone in his office, evidence spread across his desk, facing an impossible choice. Exposing James meant destroying their family legacy, but silence meant betraying everything their parents had taught them about right and wrong. In Sophie's unwavering faith and Sarah's courageous stand, he found the answer. His brother had lost sight of true legacy isn't built on power or money, but on the choices we make when everything we love is at stake. The weight of discovery became unbearable for William Anderson. Each morning, watching Sophie at bus stop 23 transformed from curiosity to crushing guilt. He had built an empire on a foundation of willful blindness, and a 5-year-old child's unwavering faith had cracked it wide open. In his penthouse office, William grappled with impossible choices. The evidence against James was irrefutable. Moving against his brother meant destroying their family name, wiping out thousands of jobs, and potentially facing criminal charges himself for failing to prevent the corruption. Doing nothing meant betraying Sarah Parker's sacrifice and condemning Sophie to endless waiting. The corporate machine continued grinding forward. Board meetings filled his calendar. Investment opportunities crossed his desk, but William found himself unable to focus, his thoughts constantly returning to Sarah's letter. Sometimes the hardest choice is the only right one. He began avoiding James, making excuses to skip their weekly dinners, unable to face the stranger his brother had become. Sleep became elusive. William spent nights reviewing security footage, watching Sarah Parker move through his hotels like a ghost, gathering evidence while maintaining a perfect facade of normalcy. Her dedication to protecting both the truth and her daughter haunted him. In her choices, he recognized the courage he had lost somewhere between poverty and wealth. His ex-wife Claire's words echoed with new meaning. "You've built an empire but forgotten how to build a home." The emptiness of his penthouse mocked him. His wealth, once a shield against vulnerability, now felt like chains binding him to corruption. Each morning he arrived earlier at the office, parking near bus stop 23, watching Sophie maintain her vigil with a determination that shamed him. The pressure mounted as James grew suspicious. Casual questions carried veiled threats. Loyal employees were suddenly transferred or resigned. The board began questioning William's distraction, his sudden interest in hotel operations, his unscheduled visits to properties. The machine was closing ranks, protecting itself. William found himself spending more time at the shelter, ostensibly reviewing potential charitable initiatives. He watched Sophie study, her small fingers tracing letters with fierce concentration. Other children invited her to play. She politely declined, returning to her books with single-minded focus. "Like mother, like daughter, MS," Thompson observed, both of them carrying burdens too heavy for their shoulders. The turning point came during a late-night drive through the city. William visited every Anderson property, seeing them through new eyes. Behind each gleaming facade lurked Sarah's evidence, falsified safety reports, laundered money, lives threatened. At the Grand Plaza Hotel, he sat in the parking garage where she had saved his life. Understanding finally that she had saved more than his heart that night, she had given him a chance to redeem his soul. In his office the next morning, William opened his father's old toolbox, kept as a reminder of his roots. Inside lay his father's worn work gloves, a tangible link to the man who had died believing in honest work and clean hands. The choice crystallized: he could preserve his empire and lose his humanity, or risk everything to become the man his father had raised him to be. Sophie's daily vigil had become a mirror, reflecting the cost of moral compromise. In her stubborn hope, William recognized the faith he had once had in justice and fair play. Sarah's evidence offered a chance to restore that faith, but the price would be everything he had spent his life building. As dawn broke over bus stop 23, William Anderson made his choice, understanding finally that true legacy isn't measured in buildings or bank accounts, but in the courage to stand up for what's right, even when standing alone. The board's reaction to William's investigation was swift and hostile. During an emergency meeting, directors who had praised his leadership for years now questioned his judgment. James sat silently at the far end of the conference table, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to the chaos unfolding. "The implications of these accusations are staggering," Gerald Thompson, the lead director, declared. "You're risking everything your father worked for, everything you've built." Other board members nodded in agreement, their faces masks of calculated concern. The subtext was clear: protect the company or face removal. The threats arrived systematically. First came the subtle warnings from longtime allies. Board members approached him privately, expressing concerns about his mental state, suggesting stress leave. Legal counsel reminded him of his fiduciary duties, emphasizing potential personal liability. Each conversation carried whispers of consequences, but James orchestrated a masterful campaign of isolation. Key executives suddenly became unavailable. Trusted assistants requested transfers. Even William's private security team was quietly replaced, citing routine rotation. The message was clear: the system was closing ranks. Anonymous letters appeared on William's desk, containing photos from his daily observations of Sophie. Each envelope carried an implicit threat: back off, or the child you're trying to protect might disappear like her mother. The surveillance extended to his penthouse, his car, his phone. William found himself living in a gilded cage of his own making. The board's strategy shifted to financial pressure. Audit committees launched reviews of William's recent decisions. Questions arose about his charitable contributions to the shelter. rumors of mental instability circulated among major shareholders. The empire he'd built was being turned against him with surgical precision. Linda Reynolds reported increasing scrutiny of Sophie's case. They're looking for legal angles to move her, she warned during a clandestine meeting. Claiming the shelter isn't suitable, suggesting more appropriate placement options. The system that had protected Sophie was being weaponized to control her. William's most loyal executives faced similar pressure. Those who stood by him found their careers suddenly in jeopardy. Performance reviews turned negative. Promotion opportunities vanished. The message spread through the corporate ranks: loyalty to William Anderson had become a liability. The pressure peaked during a shareholders' meeting. James presented a motion to temporarily relieve William of his duties, citing health concerns. The evidence William had gathered was dismissed as paranoid delusions. Even his daily visits to bus stop 23 were presented as signs of deteriorating judgment. In his darkest moment, William received an unexpected ally. Claire, his ex-wife, reached out after seeing news reports about the company's leadership transition. Over coffee in a small diner far from corporate eyes, she offered a different perspective. The man I married wouldn't let them bury the truth. Where is he? The board's final ultimatum came wrapped in concern: take a voluntary leave of absence or face a public vote of no confidence. They offered a generous settlement, a graceful exit, and most importantly, a guarantee of Sophie's safety. All he had to do was walk away, let the machine continue its operation, abandon Sarah's sacrifice and Sophie's hope. Standing at his office window, watching Sophie maintain her daily vigil below, William understood the true cost of his empire. Every gleaming building, every profitable quarter, every business award had been purchased with compromised principles and buried truths. The board hadn't changed. He had finally opened his eyes to what they had always been. Despite her perfect grades, Sophie's life at Greenwich Preparatory Academy became increasingly complicated. Her classmates, children of privilege, noticed her worn uniform and daily shelter pickup. The whispers started in hallways, evolved into direct questions. Why does your mom never come to school events? Why do you live in a shelter? Sophie faced each challenge with the same quiet dignity she showed at bus stop 23, when Jessica Miller, the class queen bee, mocked her faded backpack. Sophie simply replied, "My mom chose it specially for me." The response, delivered without anger or shame, left Jessica speechless and earned Sophie unexpected allies among her classmates. Mrs. Bennett, Sophie's homeroom teacher, noticed concerning patterns. Despite excelling academically, Sophie avoided group activities and refused to participate in parent-teacher conferences. During the annual Family Day presentation, she stood before the class and calmly described her mother as temporarily away on an important mission. The other children's snickers died when they saw the absolute conviction in her eyes. The school administration, pressured by wealthy parents, began questioning Sophie's scholarship. Anonymous complaints suggested her presence disrupted the school's community standards. The principal, Dr. Harrison, found himself caught between his concern for an exceptional student and mounting pressure from influential families. William's investigation revealed James's hand in the situation. Board members' children attended Greenwich Prep. Their sudden interest in Sophie's scholarship wasn't coincidental. The school's financial records showed recent generous donations from shell companies linked to James's network. Sophie's academic performance never wavered. Her essays won school competitions, her math scores remained perfect, her attendance record unbroken. Each achievement seemed a message to her absent mother: look, I'm keeping my promise, I'm doing everything right. The determination behind her success broke the hearts of teachers who understood its source. The turning point came during a parent-teacher meeting William attended as Sophie's temporary guardian, Mrs. Bennett, shared a recent writing assignment, My Hero. While other children wrote about superheroes or sports stars, Sophie had written about a hotel housekeeper who saved lives by keeping everything clean and telling the truth. The essay now sat in James's surveillance file, tagged as potential evidence. Linda Reynolds fought constantly to maintain Sophie's placement at Greenwich Prep. Each administrative challenge was met with documentation of Sophie's exemplary performance. But even Linda couldn't shield Sophie from the social isolation. During lunch, she sat alone, methodically eating while reviewing flashcards, her mother's photograph propped against her water bottle. The school nurse reported concerning observations Sophie never complained of illness, never asked to rest, even when running a fever. She's afraid, the nurse confided to William, afraid that any weakness might give them a reason to take her away from bus stop 23. The child's understanding of her precarious situation manifested in perfect attendance at the cost of her health. As pressure mounted on multiple fronts, Sophie's academic achievements became both shield and sword. Her presence at Greenwich Prep, supported by undeniable merit, forced the wealthy community to confront uncomfortable truths about privilege, justice, and the cost of silence. In her quiet perseverance, she embodied everything the school claimed to value, challenging those who would dismiss her based on circumstances beyond her control. The breakthrough in locating Sarah Parker came through an unlikely source. A diner waitress in Pittsburgh recognized her photograph not from William's investigation, but from Sophie's drawings posted on the shelter's missing mother's wall. Sarah had been working double shifts under the name Mary Wilson, living in a women's shelter 3 blocks from the restaurant. Sarah's carefully constructed new life revealed both desperation and determination. She worked 2 jobs, mornings at the diner, evenings cleaning offices. Her shelter roommate described her nightly ritual of counting tips, setting aside exactly 2/3 for Sophie's future. She never spoke about her past, but kept a worn photo of Sophie by her bed. William's private investigators confirmed Sarah's location but discovered something disturbing. James's network had also found her. Surveillance photos showed men watching the diner, documenting Sarah's movements. The timestamp on the most recent photos was less than 48 hours old. Sarah had maintained her vigilance even in hiding. Her current manager mentioned her habit of photographing suspicious patrons, keeping detailed notes of unusual occurrences. She had built an emergency fund, maintained multiple escape routes, developed a network of trusted allies among other service workers. She was preparing for inevitable discovery. The Pittsburgh shelter's records painted a heartbreaking picture. Sarah took adult education classes, studying law and accounting. Her classmates noted her obsession with corporate crime legislation, her detailed questions about whistleblower protections. Every move was calculated toward eventual justice. William arrived in Pittsburgh as a winter storm approached. Through the diner's window, he watched Sarah serve customers with the same quiet efficiency she had shown at the Grand Plaza. 5 years of hiding had added gray to her hair, lines around her eyes, but hadn't diminished her careful attention to detail. The moment Sarah spotted William, her composure cracked slightly. A coffee pot trembled in her hand before her training reasserted itself. She served 3 more tables, completed her orders, and calmly walked into the back room. By the time William reached the kitchen, she had vanished through the employee exit. A note waited in Sarah's locker, addressed to William Bus Stop 23, wasn't random. "It's where I first learned about your brother's operation. Sophie knows to wait there, because that's where the truth began. If you're reading this, you've finally seen what I saw. The evidence is in the place where angels fall. Sophie will understand." The race to protect Sarah became desperate. James's men were closing in, their surveillance tightening. Sarah's carefully built escape routes were being systematically blocked. Her backup identities were being flagged in system after system. The net was drawing closed. William found Sarah again at a small chapel 3 towns over. She sat in the last pew, back straight, hands folded like Sophie at her bus stop. "I taught her that posture," she said without turning. "Straight spine, clear eyes, truth in every breath. She's kept her promise, hasn't she?" The conversation that followed would change everything, but first they had to survive the storm gathering outside. James Anderson's web of manipulation unraveled spectacularly during a globally broadcast press conference. Initially planned to announce William's voluntary leave of absence, the event transformed into a public expose of corporate corruption. Minutes before James could begin his prepared statement, video screens throughout the headquarters began displaying evidence. Security footage showed James threatening employees, surveillance photos of Sophie, bank transfers to criminal organizations. Each piece of evidence played in devastating sequence, broadcast simultaneously to every Anderson property worldwide. The technical mastermind behind this revelation was an unexpected ally, Marcus Chen, a junior aid specialist who Sarah had befriended. He had quietly preserved copies of her evidence, waiting for the right moment. As James frantically tried to shut down the system, Marcus's security protocols kept the truth flowing. From his position at the podium, James watched his carefully constructed world collapse. Board members began receiving real-time alerts about their own complicity. Shareholders witnessed their investments crumble. Law enforcement, already positioned throughout the building, moved to secure documents and servers. William, standing at the back of the room, finally saw his brother clearly. James's composure cracked, revealing years of resentment and rage. "You were always father's favorite," he snarled into the live microphones. The perfect son, the brilliant builder. Someone had to do the dirty work to keep your precious empire growing. The evidence painted a damning picture of systematic corruption. James had targeted vulnerable employees, especially single parents like Sarah, using their children as leverage. His surveillance operation extended beyond the company, reaching into schools, shelters, and public services. The scale of manipulation stunned even veteran investigators. Sarah's meticulous documentation proved crucial. Her records showed how James had exploited the company's charitable initiatives to launder money, using donations to women's shelters as cover for tracking potential whistleblowers. The same system meant to protect vulnerable families had been weaponized against them. The most shocking revelation came from James's private files. He had orchestrated their mother's financial ruin, forcing her to work multiple jobs until exhaustion contributed to her death. This calculated cruelty served dual purposes, eliminating oversight and providing James emotional leverage over William through shared grief. Media coverage exploded. Bus Stop 23 began trending worldwide as Sophie's story captured public imagination. Corporate whistleblowers across the industry came forward, inspired by Sarah's courage. James's network began imploding as criminal associates rushed to make deals with authorities. In the chaos, James attempted one final manipulation. He announced that he had evidence of William's involvement, threatening to destroy both brothers unless William intervened. The bluff failed when Sarah's final piece of evidence emerged: recordings of James admitting he had deliberately kept William in the dark, knowing his brother's moral compass would never allow such corruption. The corporate showdown unfolded in the Anderson Towers boardroom during an emergency shareholders meeting. William stood at one end of the mahogany table, Sarah's evidence spread before him. James occupied the opposite end, surrounded by lawyers and security personnel. The board members sat between them, a nervous chorus of expensive suits and shifting loyalties. William began by playing Sarah's recordings of James's late-night meetings. His brother's voice filled the room, coldly discussing surveillance of employees' children, laundered money, and silenced whistleblowers. James maintained his composure until William revealed their mother's medical records, proving James had denied her access to treatment while funneling her insurance money into his schemes. The confrontation escalated when federal agents entered, led by an investigator who had been building a case against James for years. Sarah's evidence provided the final pieces they needed. As agents moved to secure documents, James triggered his contingency plan, a complete system shutdown designed to destroy electronic evidence. But Sarah had anticipated this. Her friend Marcus had quietly backed up everything to secure servers. As James's delete protocols activated, screens around the room began displaying his criminal network in real time. Bank transfers, surveillance photos, threatened families. The truth cascaded through the building's digital infrastructure. James launched into a bitter tirade, his careful facade crumbling. He accused William of privileged blindness, of building an empire on his brother's buried crimes. "You needed me," he shouted. "Every permit, every contract, every deal, I made them happen while you played the noble builder." The board's reaction split along predictable lines. Those implicated in James's scheme scrambled for distance. Others, seeing the inevitable, began offering evidence in exchange for leniency. The corporate machine was eating itself, decades of corruption surfacing in a cascade of betrayal. Sarah's appearance via video link silenced the chaos. From a secure location, she methodically outlined 5 years of evidence gathering. Her testimony, delivered with the same quiet dignity she'd shown as a housekeeper, transformed the corporate drama into a human story of courage and consequence. The final blow came from an unexpected source. Claire, William's ex-wife and a former prosecutor, had been quietly building a RICO case. She presented evidence linking James's operation to broader industry corruption. The implications reached beyond Anderson Enterprises to other major developers. But as federal agents led James away, he made one last attempt at manipulation. "Sophie will never be safe," he called to William. "There are others, bigger players. You've destroyed everything trying to save one child." William's response was simple: "No, James. Sophie saved us by showing us who we really are." The aftermath was immediate and far-reaching. Trading in Anderson stock suspended, board members resigned, media crews besieged the building. But in the executive bathroom, William finally allowed himself to cry, grieving for his brother, their mother, and the empire built on buried truths. When he emerged, his path was clear: justice for Sarah, safety for Sophie, and a complete dismantling of the corrupt system his blindness had allowed to flourish. Your support means everything to us. If you found meaning in Sarah and Sophie's story of courage and justice, please subscribe to join our community. Together we can share more powerful stories that remind us of hope, truth, and the strength of the human spirit. The tragedy unfolded in the Anderson Tower's executive bathroom during a brief moment when James convinced his guards he needed privacy. He had managed to conceal a small revolver, a final contingency plan. The gunshot echoed through the building's marble halls. William reached his brother first, finding James slumped against the wall, the bullet having grazed his temple. Blood marbled the imported tile, but James's aim, like his final act of defiance, had faltered. As medical teams rushed in, James's last conscious words were a whispered echo of their childhood: "You were always the lucky one." The media frenzy intensified. Headlines screamed about the Anderson brothers' dramatic fall. Journalists camped outside the hospital, where James lay in a medically induced coma. The attempted suicide transformed public perception, adding a Shakespearean dimension to the corporate set. Sophie learned about the shooting during her morning routine at bus stop 23. A passerby's radio carried the news, and the child's response haunted witnesses. She simply straightened her posture further and said, "Sometimes bad people hurt themselves when the truth comes out. My mommy told me truth is like medicine, it hurts before it heals." Security footage revealed James had planned the attempt meticulously. He'd recorded a video confession, accepting sole responsibility while implicating larger criminal networks. The recording, part suicide note and part final manipulation, threatened to expose connections reaching into government offices and rival corporations. In the hospital waiting room, William confronted the cost of brotherly love. Photos of their childhood lined his phone, two boys sharing dreams on a fire escape, promising to build something their father would be proud of. Somewhere along the way, those dreams had corrupted, ambition poisoning the bond between brothers. The investigation uncovered darker aspects of James's mental state. His private journals revealed a man consumed by competition with his brother, twisting their shared tragedy into justification for crimes. The attempted suicide was his final attempt to win their lifelong game, casting himself as the tragic figure while threatening to drag others down in his fall. Williams' resignation as CEO came during a tense emergency board meeting. Despite the evidence vindicating his investigation, the scandal's magnitude left the board no choice. The company's stock had plummeted, partners were withdrawing, and shareholders demanded dramatic action. The resignation speech was brief but impactful. William acknowledged his failure to detect the corruption, accepted responsibility for his blindness, and announced the creation of a victims' compensation fund using his personal fortune. As he removed his company ID, decades of power stripped away in seconds. The transition proved chaotic. Longtime executives jumped ship, fearing further revelations. Projects halted mid-construction, leaving skeletal buildings as monuments to corporate corruption. Employees faced uncertainty as the company's reputation tarnished their resumes. The media portrayed Williams' fall differently from James's. Where his brother was painted as a villain, William became a tragic figure, the noble builder betrayed by blood. Some outlets suggested his resignation was a calculated move to protect the company's remaining assets. Others praised his moral awakening, though questioned its timing. Sophie's reaction cut through the corporate drama. When told William wouldn't be driving past bus stop 23 anymore, she nodded wisely. "He's helping my mummy tell the truth now. That's more important than being a boss." Her simple perspective highlighted the contrast between corporate power and moral courage. The personal cost mounted quickly. William's social circle evaporated. Country club memberships were quietly revoked. Charity boards requested his withdrawal. The same society that had celebrated his success now treated him as contagious, fearing association with the scandal. In his penthouse apartment, William sorted through decades of corporate achievements. Awards felt hollow, recognition meaningless. Among the accolades, he found a framed photo of the company's first project, a small renovation job his father had helped secure. That night, he finally understood what true legacy meant. The scandal exploded across international media within hours of James's suicide attempt. Anderson corruption and Bus Stop 23 dominated social media, with Sophie's story touching hearts worldwide. News helicopters circled Anderson Tower, while protesters gathered below, their signs demanding justice for whistleblowers. Major networks ran continuous coverage of the Anderson Empire's collapse. Financial analysts detailed the corruption's scope, estimating billions in laundered money. Human interest stories focused on Sarah and Sophie, portraying their separation as a symbol of corporate greed's human cost. The revelation of employee surveillance sparked particular outrage. Documents showed hundreds of families had been monitored, their children's routines tracked as leverage. Former employees came forward with stories of threats and intimidation. Each testimony reinforced Sarah's evidence, building a devastating picture of systematic abuse. Congressional hearings were announced to investigate industry-wide corruption. The Anderson case exposed vulnerabilities in corporate oversight, prompting calls for stricter whistleblower protections. Sarah's documentation became a blueprint for investigating other major developers. Local impact hit hardest. The Anderson Foundation's charitable projects faced scrutiny, revealing many as money laundering fronts. Community programs lost funding overnight. The women's shelter housing Sophie saw donations plummet due to its Anderson connection, though anonymous gifts mysteriously covered the shortfall. Sophie's school struggled with the attention. Media tried accessing campus for interviews, forcing Greenwich Prep to hire additional security. Students shared stories online about the girl from Bus Stop 23. Some supportive, others cruelly highlighting class divisions that had always simmered beneath the school's prestigious surface. Internal documents leaked steadily, each revelation spreading shockwaves. James's surveillance network implicated politicians, judges, and business leaders. The scandal metastasized beyond the Andersons, threatening pillars of the establishment who had benefited from their corruption. The truth about Sarah Parker's innocence emerged through a meticulous reconstruction of her final weeks at Grand Plaza Hotel. Security footage, restored from corrupted files, showed her working late on December 15th, documenting financial discrepancies in the hotel's main office. The cameras caught her witnessing an argument between James and known criminals, followed by her life-changing decision to save William's life. Sarah's innocence was further proven through recovered email chains. She had attempted to report the corruption through proper channels, sending detailed concerns to the company's ethics hotline. Each report disappeared into James's surveillance system, triggering escalating threats against Sophie. Bank records confirmed Sarah had rejected multiple bribes, even as her daughter's preschool reported mysterious men photographing the playground. The hotel's housekeeping logs revealed Sarah's methodology. She had used her position to access offices after suspicious meetings, photographing discarded documents and recording conversations through air vents. Her notebook, discovered in the safety deposit box, detailed dates, times, and participants with professional precision. Each entry was backed by photographic evidence or recordings. William's heart attack had inadvertently exposed James's entire operation. Sarah's decision to perform CPR placed her in the perfect position to overhear crucial details of the criminal network. Her medical training, documented in her employee file, had saved not only William's life but ultimately the company's soul. The investigation uncovered Sarah's desperate attempts to protect both truth and daughter. She had created a trail of evidence scattered across multiple locations, each piece meaningless alone but damning when combined. The choice of Bus Stop 23 was strategic. It was visible from multiple security cameras and near a police station, offering Sophie some protection. Most compelling was Sarah's final report, addressed to federal investigators but never delivered. It methodically outlined the corruption, included supporting evidence, and predicted potential retaliation. Her last paragraph revealed her character. I understand the risks in coming forward, but I want my daughter to grow up in a world where truth matters more than power. 3 independent forensic accounting teams verified Sarah's findings. Every transaction she had flagged led to criminal enterprises. Every suspicious meeting she documented connected to illegal activities. But her evidence was airtight, her methodology beyond reproach. She wasn't just a whistleblower, she was a master investigator trapped in circumstances beyond her control. The revelation of Sarah's innocence transformed public opinion. Media coverage shifted from corporate scandal to human interest, focusing on her courage and sacrifice. Her story resonated particularly with working mothers who recognized the impossible choice between truth and child safety. Sophie's vigil at Bus Stop 23 became a symbol of faith in justice against overwhelming odds. As Sarah's vindication spread, support poured in from unexpected sources. Former colleagues shared stories of her integrity and kindness. Hotel guests wrote about her professionalism and attention to detail. Even some board members, initially hostile, admitted their misjudgment of her character. The housekeeper who had saved lives through both action and truth became an unlikely hero for corporate reform. The community's response to the Anderson scandal transformed from outrage to action. Local business owners near Bus Stop 23 began offering Sophie breakfast, keeping watch over her morning vigil. A coffee shop owner installed extra lighting to ensure her safety in pre-dawn hours. Regular bus commuters adjusted their schedules to provide an unofficial protective circle around the determined child. Greenwich Prep's Parents Association, initially hostile to Sophie's presence, launched a scholarship fund in Sarah's name. The same families who had questioned Sophie's place at the school now championed her cause. Students organized a Truth Matters campaign, wearing butterfly pins like those on Sophie's worn backpack. The women's shelter became a focal point for corporate reform activism. Former employees of Anderson Enterprises gathered there, sharing stories and evidence. Linda Reynolds coordinated with legal aid organizations, building a network to protect whistleblowers' families. The shelter's conference room transformed into a command center for justice. local law enforcement subtly increased patrols around bus stop 23. Officers would casually park nearby during Sophie's wait, their presence deterring James's remaining surveillance network. The bus stop became a symbol of resistance against corporate intimidation, with community members maintaining an informal neighborhood watch. But religious organizations joined the support network. Churches, synagogues, and mosques offered sanctuary spaces for families facing corporate threats. Interfaith groups organized prayer vigils at bus stop 23, their presence providing both spiritual and physical protection for Sophie's daily ritual. Small acts of kindness multiplied. A local seamstress quietly altered Sophie's uniforms, ensuring she remained presentable despite growth spurts. A retired teacher volunteered to tutor her after school. Restaurant owners near the shelter provided free meals, understanding that community strength flows from countless small gestures. The media's tone shifted as community support grew. Local news channels featured stories about neighborhood unity rather than corporate scandal. Sophie's morning routine became a testament to community values rather than a tragic spectacle. Social media campaigns highlighted positive actions, inspiring similar movements in other cities. Professional organizations mobilized support. The Bar Association established a whistleblower defense fund. Mental health professionals offered free counseling for affected families. Labor unions provided resources for employees facing corporate retaliation. The individual courage of Sarah and Sophie catalyzed institutional change. Perhaps most touching was the informal parents network that emerged. Working mothers organized childcare schedules, ensuring Sophie was never truly alone. They shared school pickup duties, attended parent-teacher conferences, and maintained a presence at school events. Their support honored Sarah's sacrifice while protecting her daughter's childhood. The community's embrace extended beyond physical support. Local artists created murals celebrating whistleblower courage. Musicians performed at benefit concerts for the shelter. Writers documented the story, ensuring future generations would understand the power of individual truth against corporate corruption. Bus Stop 23 evolved from a location to a movement, proving that one child's unwavering faith could awaken a community's conscience. The media exposure of the Anderson corruption scandal unfolded in waves of increasingly damning revelations. Major networks aired special reports detailing the complex web of financial crimes, featuring interviews with former employees and experts analyzing Sarah's evidence. The coverage focused on the human cost, with Sophie's bus stop vigil becoming a powerful symbol of innocence confronting corporate greed. Investigative journalists uncovered connections to other corporations and public officials. The Anderson case exposed industry-wide corruption, revealing how James's network had infiltrated regulatory agencies and compromised oversight mechanisms. Each new revelation triggered investigations into other companies, creating a domino effect across the real estate sector. Social media amplified the story's impact. Bus Stop 23 evolved from a trending hashtag to a movement, with people sharing their own experiences of corporate intimidation. Videos of Sophie's daily vigil went viral, drawing attention to whistleblower protection issues. Digital activists compiled evidence, creating searchable databases of corporate misconduct. Television documentaries reconstructed Sarah's investigation, highlighting her methodical gathering of evidence while maintaining her cover as a housekeeper. Security footage showed her working late, documenting meetings, and ultimately saving William's life, all while under surveillance. Her story challenged stereotypes about whistleblowers, presenting corporate accountability as a moral imperative rather than betrayal. Financial journalists dissected the money laundering operation, explaining complex schemes in accessible terms. Graphics illustrated how legitimate businesses were used to clean criminal funds, with Anderson properties serving as fronts for international crime syndicates. The coverage educated the public about corporate corruption indicators, empowering employees to recognize suspicious patterns. Local news outlets focused on community impact. They covered the shelter's struggles, the school's transformation, and neighborhood responses to Sophie's situation. Human interest stories highlighted small acts of kindness, from coffee shop owners watching over Sophie to retired teachers offering free tutoring. International media drew parallels to corporate scandals worldwide. The Anderson case became a case study in business ethics courses, examining the role of individual conscience in corporate settings. Sarah's documentation methods were praised as a model for responsible whistleblowing. 24-hour news channels maintained coverage through James's suicide attempt and William's resignation. Expert panels analyzed corporate culture, whistleblower protection laws, and the psychology of corruption. The sustained attention kept pressure on regulatory agencies and legislators to respond with meaningful reforms. The media scrutiny extended to William's transformation. Journalists traced his journey from corporate leader to advocate for reform, examining how Sophie's unwavering faith had sparked his moral awakening. His public statements about corporate responsibility and personal redemption added depth to the narrative of corruption and conscience. Technology reporters investigated James's surveillance network, revealing sophisticated systems used to monitor employees and their families. The coverage sparked privacy debates and calls for stricter corporate surveillance regulations. Sophie's butterfly backpack, captured endlessly in photographs, became a symbol of innocence under hostile observation. The reunion between Sarah and Sophie took place at bus stop 23 at dawn, exactly as promised. Sarah emerged from a black SUV provided by the Witness Protection Program, her steps hesitant after 5 years of separation. Sophie maintained her usual perfect posture on the bench until she heard her mother's footsteps. Then, with the same quiet dignity she'd shown throughout her vigil, she turned. Their embrace happened in silence. No Hollywood dramatics, no running or screaming, just a mother and daughter holding each other as the sun rose over Manhattan. Sophie's only words, whispered into her mother's shoulder, were, "I knew you'd come back when it was safe." Sarah's tears fell into her daughter's carefully braided hair, each drop carrying years of separation and sacrifice. William watched from a discreet distance, accompanied by federal agents ensuring the reunion's security. James's criminal network had been dismantled, but caution remained necessary. The Witness Protection Team had orchestrated every detail, from the timing to the secure perimeter established by plainclothes officers. The shelter staff had prepared Sophie without revealing the reunion's timing. That morning they noticed she wore the blue dress Sarah had left for her, preserved perfectly for 5 years. Her butterfly backpack contained every letter her mother had sent through Linda Reynolds, each one protected in plastic sleeves. Sarah's first act was to fix Sophie's collar, a mother's instinctive gesture that bridged the years of separation. She examined her daughter's face, noting new freckles, longer lashes, subtle changes that photos couldn't capture. Sophie responded by showing her mother the academic medals hidden beneath her jacket, proof she'd kept her promise to study hard. Their reunion attracted a respectful audience. Regular commuters who had watched over Sophie paused their morning routines. The coffee shop owner who had provided her hot chocolate on cold mornings wiped tears with his apron. Even hardened federal agents turned away, affected by the quiet intensity of the moment. The media, held at a distance by security, captured the reunion with long-range lenses, but the published photos showed remarkable restraint, no sensational headlines, just simple captions about promises kept and justice served. The image of mother and daughter silhouetted against the rising sun became a symbol of hope for other families separated by corporate corruption. Sarah and Sophie left bus stop 23 hand in hand, heading not to the shelter but to a new life protected by federal authorities. They carried little Sophie's backpack, Sarah's small suitcase, but their step-matching walk spoke of unshakable bonds renewed. As they departed, Sophie turned to wave at William, a gesture that encompassed forgiveness, gratitude, and a wisdom beyond her years. The restructuring of Anderson Enterprises emerged from the ashes of scandal as a model for corporate reform. William, though no longer CEO, worked with federal authorities to transform the company's culture. The new board, comprised largely of ethics experts and former whistleblowers, implemented unprecedented transparency measures. Every Anderson property underwent forensic auditing. Criminal profits were seized and redirected into a victim compensation fund. The Grand Plaza Hotel, where Sarah had uncovered the corruption, became headquarters for a new corporate accountability initiative. Former surveillance rooms were converted into whistleblower support centers. Justice moved methodically through the corporate ranks. James, recovering from his suicide attempt, faced multiple federal charges. Board members who had enabled the corruption accepted plea deals in exchange for testimony. The investigation expanded to partner companies, exposing industry-wide criminal networks. The company's reformation emphasized employee protection. New policies, dubbed the Sarah Parker Protocols, established clear channels for reporting misconduct. The protocols included family protection programs, anonymous reporting systems, and mandatory ethics training at all levels. Most significantly, employee surveillance systems were dismantled and replaced with transparent oversight mechanisms. Legal consequences reached beyond the Anderson organization. Politicians who had facilitated corrupt deals faced prosecution. Regulatory agencies underwent restructuring to prevent future failures. The case sparked legislative reform, strengthening whistleblower protections and corporate accountability measures. Greenwich Preparatory Academy established the Parker Scholarship, providing education for children of whistleblowers. The program, initially controversial among wealthy parents, became a source of pride as students learned about corporate ethics through Sophie's story. The school's curriculum now includes modules on moral courage and social responsibility. The women's shelter received substantial support from recovered funds. New facilities opened across the city, each incorporating dedicated spaces for families affected by corporate retaliation. Linda Reynolds headed a new foundation providing legal and psychological support to whistleblowers' children. William's personal transformation paralleled the corporate changes. He dedicated his fortune to establishing the Anderson Parker Institute for Corporate Ethics, focusing on practical protection for employees facing moral dilemmas. His public speeches about brotherhood, betrayal, and redemption helped reshape discussions about corporate culture. 5 years after the reunion at Bus Stop 23, the story's impact continues to resonate. Sarah Parker now heads the National Whistleblower Protection Alliance, advocating for corporate transparency through congressional testimony and international speaking engagements. Her expertise in documenting corruption has helped shape new corporate accountability laws. Sophie, now 10, excels at Greenwich Prep, where she's known for establishing a peer support group for students facing family challenges. Her perfect posture remains, but her smile comes easier now. The butterfly backpack sits in a glass case in the school's ethics center, a reminder that courage often comes in small packages. William Anderson found unexpected purpose after leaving corporate life. The Anderson Parker Institute has become a leading force in corporate reform, providing practical support for whistleblowers while advocating for systemic change. His relationship with Sophie continues. He attends her school events, a proud uncle figure in her reconstructed family. James Anderson, after serving 3 years, entered a rehabilitation program focusing on corporate offenders. His recovery includes regular speaking engagements at business schools, where he analyzes how power and competition poisoned family bonds. The brothers maintain cautious contact, rebuilding trust through shared commitment to reform. Bus Stop 23 transformed into a memorial park dedicated to corporate whistleblowers. A bronze statue depicts a small girl with perfect posture, a butterfly backpack beside her. The plaque reads simply, "For those who wait in faith for justice." Local children leave drawings and notes, creating an evolving testament to moral courage. The Anderson corporate scandal sparked lasting change across industries. Parker protocols become standard language in corporate policies. Ethics courses study the case, examining how one mother's courage and one child's faith exposed systemic corruption. Insurance companies now require similar protection measures in their corporate policies. Sarah and Sophie live quietly under modified witness protection, their location known only to a trusted few. Their morning ritual continues, sitting together at breakfast, sharing stories about their day ahead. Sophie still maintains perfect grades, but now she studies for herself rather than as a beacon for her mother's return. The shelter where Sophie waited 5 years thrives as a center for family advocacy. Linda Reynolds trains social workers nationwide in supporting children of whistleblowers, the missing mothers. The wall where Sophie's drawings once hung now displays success stories of families reunited through corporate reform. If Sophie and Sarah's story touched your heart, please take a moment to support our team by subscribing and sharing this video with your friends and family. Your likes, comments, and emotional responses help us continue creating meaningful content that matters. We're considering producing a sequel that follows Sophie's journey into adolescence and Sarah's advocacy work. Would you be interested in seeing their story continue? Let us know in the comments below.